Hi team, today we're going to talk about the Badger DAO token and in particular try to answer the question of when moon. Because most importantly for this token, it has been beaten down and beaten down and beaten down. And I have to say it's been completely unjustified. This token has so much going on for it and so many near and I suppose semi-near or short or long-term sort of catalysts coming up that seems unbelievable to me that people are continuing to dump this token. But there's a lot of big changes coming on the horizon. And again, each of these changes is really something I'm seeing as incredibly bullish and something we should really be focused on. First, some of the negativity. Where are we at? First thing we'll notice is the Ethereum total value lock. So the Bitcoin that is currently in vaults and in overall value for Badger has been declining. We're looking at around sort of high 700 millions at the moment. This is down from sort of the 900s only a few short months ago. Some of that's due to the declining price of Bitcoin and not surprising the declining price of CVX. But we're also seeing a lot less power, I suppose, in the power of the DAO at the moment because of the low price of the actual Badger DAO token. We're now looking at a price of $7.65, unbelievable bargain basement prices. And it was like $6.90 even a couple of days ago. Part of this is really because people just seem to hate DeFi at the moment. The FUD that happened with Andre Cronje, nothing we can do about that and what's going on with the Phantom chain, but there's just a lot of dislike for what's been happening in DeFi more broadly, and people are getting nervous and starting to really dump everything they earn for stables. In particular of note, though, is that Badger has been delivering the entire time. They're still delivering emissions, they're still delivering yield, and they're still showing us that they have a plan. And some of that plan at the moment really links to these short-term catalysts. So the top three plans here, and you'll see that in the middle of the screen there. First one is to get more CVX locked, and that's just an ongoing plan for really anybody who's got a brain as it goes in the DeFi space. Second is really aligning what those convex depositors have towards either being sort of convex maxis or alternatively people who are focused more on their BTC deposits. And the third part here, and this is the part that's kind of key for us, is keeping that Badger price up. Their plans for getting after that are after a couple of different things. The first is the ability to incentivize the wrapped Bitcoin Badger liquidity pool incentives basically for that pool that's starting to sort of build up on CRV. So how can vote weight be added towards that particular pool? The second part is to provide a little bit more utility to the BBE, CVX, CVX LP. You'll now be able to deposit that, or very soon at least, into the Rary and to the Rary Fuse pool, so you can go and start to borrow some stables. There's also a lot of exciting stuff happening with Badger, with the partnerships they've developed with OxDAO and with Weave, and some of the vaults they've set up recently on Phantom, so some exciting stuff. But what we're going to talk about today is some of, I suppose, the key thing that's been changing, or is about to change as it comes into effect, what's been going on with the Badger token itself. And this is it. It's BIP 87. This is what's about to take effect. Badger DAO has essentially been constantly analyzing the market and trying to understand what's going on with the broad user base. What do people want? And in particular, how do we make sure we get the best for users and how do we get the best for the actual Badger DAO token? And it's because of that I'm such a big fan of this token, and surprisingly of this protocol. What's key here is that Badger has realized that the idea, essentially what everybody has been trying to do within the curve wars and the convex wars, the idea at the moment in particular with the current market of constantly trying to bribe other CVX holders and paying them in Badger and in BBE CVX is really leading them to essentially get their Badger and then immediately dump the token whenever they can. So essentially they'll get the token and dump it, and they might even simply do it through what happens with Vodium and Union. They might do it any number of different ways. But the problem with him doing that, of course, is it's constantly beating down the price of all the emitted Badger. So there's absolutely no benefit really to the overall Badger ecosystem here. Well, that said, you would think there would be, because of course, where does all that vote weight go? Well, it goes to giving more emissions to the kind of vaults or pools or wherever that in particular Badger wants to have incentivized. The problem has been, of course, in the current market, that's not actually working out. So what we're really seeing is that Badger is actually losing money for each of these votes that we're bribing, and therefore it seems to be less valuable, because unless you can get a full 100% capture of each of these pools, there's absolutely no way to make enough money based on the additional emissions you get back through the curve lock positions. So essentially what Badger has come to realize is that in the current market conditions, it's just not economical to be essentially bribing people to get more of their CVX votes. So what's the plan been? Well, the plan has been in BIP 87 to essentially now use the incredible weight of CVX that Badger now holds and to sell that instead. So now selling our votes instead of bribing. Now I'll let that sink in for a sec. No longer will Badger be focused on bribing others. They'll be now focused on selling their votes. This is big news, right? Selling the votes instead. What they'll be doing when they sell those votes now is grabbing all of the tokens, so everything that they're getting as part of their sales, so everything they're being bribed with, using that to buy two things. With all that money, they'll be buying 75% Badger vote escrowed CVX, putting that straight back into the CVX depositors and auto compounding it for them, so they don't have to do anything. And the other 25% will be in buying Badger tokens on market. So using all those emissions from the millions of dollars worth of tokens, of CVX tokens locked in Badger, to come back and buy more of those Badger tokens. And that'll be distributed back again to BBE CVX holders. So we're seeing this as A, mega bullish for those who already have BBE CVX positions, and also mega bullish for those who actually own Badger itself. So all that weight now will no longer be being dumped on the markets. You'll have way less Badger coming on, and instead you'll have a whole bunch of Badger being bought up, in particular by this auto compounding system being managed by Badger itself. So what you're going to see is, as people want the voting power of what Badger brings to the table with CVX, other tokens are going to have to sell, essentially give their tokens in order to buy Badger to then distribute back to Badger holders. That's extremely positive for us. There'll be no more dumping of the Badger, or at least significantly less. If you look at the rest of the numbers here, you'll see 5% will go back to that ecosystem stuff. So in particular, managing that LP, the BBE CVX LP, that's again selling the voting power. 5% of those sales, again, will go towards building up the Treasury's CVX position. And now only 5% will be used for voting. And that's that small little part, and that'll be for that Badger wrapped Bitcoin LP at Curve, which I talked about a little bit earlier. So, you know, that incentivization for depositing your Badger. So I think it's extremely bullish stuff here. I just really wanted to show you what was going on with that. So if you look across, here's BIP87 and the forum vote, which gives a full breakdown of how that all plays out. And this picture here gives you a good understanding of what's going on. So of all the BBCVX that exists, you'll note majority of it is up here, and this is basically the user owned, and this is Treasury. We'll talk about this part quickly. The Treasury essentially will be voting, like I'll show you in a second. They'll be voting for that wrapped Bitcoin Badger piece. And then you'll have additional 5% down here from the overall pool, also going towards the same thing. The rest of it now is being sold, and it's going to come back and basically support users and support the Badger DAO token price. And there's a full breakdown of that here too. So this is the thing to remember. The Treasury for Badger, this is not redacted cartel or something similar. The Treasury for Badger owns 98,311 CVX, right? 98,311. The actual users, so users control 1.56 million, right? So a significantly more than was owned previously. What's important to realize here is that the percentage of the vote for wrapped Bitcoin and Badger will now be looking at 10%, while the rest, so in other words, selling it to buy more Badger and to buy more of the BBCVX, 90% of those emissions will now be coming back basically to support the Badger token price. So 75% of that 90, we're looking at, oh my goodness, my math won't be that good, but we're talking each weight, probably something close to $300,000 to $400,000 worth of Badger being purchased on market each time. That's a complete guess on numbers. Obviously, I'm just doing it in my head now, but we'll have a look at that a little bit later once we get once we see how that actually played out. So some exciting stuff. You'll note that the Badger token price at the moment is sitting at $7.57. We can expect that to continue, and we can also expect people to soon enough have the opportunity to really deposit some of their CVX tokens, if they want to hold on to them and never actually have to sell, into the Rare Fuse capital pool. So a lot of positivity there. So without further ado, that sort of really covers what's going on in the short-term catalyst list. I will just very quickly cover one last piece. Citadel DAO is the piece I've been talking about now for 2 months. I've still yet to see a video on this which describes everything that's going on. But what I can say is that if you simply look at this bottom tweet here from the head guy designing the thing, Citadel DAO is going to be getting Bitcoin by those who basically seek to bond their Bitcoin or bond their CVX or whatever else, to bond it into the Citadel Treasury. And that Treasury will be depositing their Bitcoin and their Badger into the Badger DAO's ecosystem. They'll be using that to earn more Badger, which they'll also be locking. And then from there, buying more Bitcoin and buying more Badger. So essentially, they'll be constantly reducing the supply of Badger actually on the market. So this sub DAO here is being built essentially to support the Badger DAO ecosystem. So the key then becomes, well, who's supporting this thing? Is there anyone of interest that's actually supporting Citadel DAO? And here you find it, the Knights of Citadel. And these Knights are essentially the 6 or 7 here, I should say, plus Badger itself, sort of key members who is going to be contributing, a whole bunch essentially to what's going on with Citadel. We don't know exactly what that means yet, but we certainly know that their token holders will be involved in the whitelist, as will Badger. So if you look at some of these different tokens here, you've got Convex, you've got Ren, Frax, Alchemix, Redacted Cartel, Tokenomic, Tribe DAO. You've got essentially all these different groups here who are all coming. These are the biggest names in DeFi, and all of them are coming in essentially to work through and with the Citadel DAO to develop sort of this, Ohm fork, Ohm Pro fork essentially, which will be bonding Bitcoin to create the community's Bitcoin well. So just a fascinating sort of situation, but importantly, something that's going to be buying Badger DAO token and holding on to it forever. So I'll be looking to do a deep dive on Citadel in the coming weeks. I'm hoping, I haven't seen any other videos yet that give it a good explainer, so hopefully I can do that, and hopefully that'll be some value. In the meantime, I remain as excited about Badger DAO as ever. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the description or the questions part below. Thanks very much.